In Manipur, there's a day that's so much more than just a date on the calendar. It's called Khongjom Day, and it's really woven into the very fabric of the state's identity, its memory, its culture. But what happens when a day that's supposed to bring everyone together becomes a symbol of just how divided they are? And this quote, it just nails it. For the people of Manipur, this isn't about remembering some dusty old battle. No, it's a sacred day. It's about honoring an incredible spirit of resistance and sacrifice. It's deeply personal.
And that, right there, is the big question. It's the whole reason we're doing this explainer. This day of solemn remembrance has somehow become a modern flashpoint. So, to figure out why a day meant to unite is now at the center of a protest, we've got to look at what's happening now and what happened way back then. Okay, so first things first, let's unpack the current situation. These calls for a boycott in 2026, they didn't just pop up out of nowhere. They're rooted in a really deep and really painful modern crisis.
So there's this major coalition of civil society groups, COCOMI, and they've called for politicians to be completely barred from the official ceremonies. And this demand, it really reflects a deep, deep public frustration. For almost 3 years, the state has been torn apart by ethnic violence. We're talking over 300 people killed and tens of thousands forced from their homes. So in that kind of atmosphere, you can see why many feel like these official events just ring hollow. But then, right at the last minute, the government invites the protesters for talks, which suddenly turns this whole moment of tension into a potential turning point.
Now, to really get the weight of this day, we have to rewind the clock, way back to the Anglo-Manipuri War of 1891. This was the moment that defined Manipur's relationship with the British Empire and gave birth to the heroes that are still remembered today. It all kicked off with a classic power struggle. After the king died in 1886, his sons started fighting over the throne. This chaos inside the kingdom gave the British the perfect excuse to step in. Well, things escalated fast. It led to several high-ranking British officials being killed right in the capital, Imphal. And the British response was swift and massive. They sent 3 separate military columns to march on Manipur and take complete control. So 2 of the British columns met basically no resistance. But the third one, the one marching in from Tammu in Burma, that was a totally different story. At a place called Khongjom, a manipulative force, even though they were completely outnumbered and outgunned, decided to make their final desperate stand. This wasn't just another fight. This was the battle. This was the moment that defined the entire resistance.
And that whole spirit of defiance is really embodied by one man, Major Pakona Brajabasi. The story goes that the British were so blown away by his courage, they actually offered to spare his life if he'd switch sides and join them. But he refused. He chose death over surrender, and that act of defiance cemented him as an absolute legend in Manipuri history.
See, a battle might end on the field, but how you remember it? That's a whole other story. In Manipur, the story of this lost war wasn't just written down in history books. It was sung into existence. It created this incredibly unique and powerful cultural tradition.
And this tradition is called Khongjom Parba. It's this amazing form of ballad where you have a single performer who uses rhythmic storytelling, music from a small drum, and a whole lot of dramatic flair to bring the stories of the war to life. It's history, it's art, it's performance, all rolled into one powerful package. And get this, the way it all started is just heartbreaking. They say Khongjom Parba was started by a man named Dobi Lainoy. He had actually been a guide for the British column that fought at Khongjom, and he was just overcome with guilt and grief over the defeat of his own people. So he started to wander from village to village, singing the story of the battle, the bravery, the tragedy, the loss. His personal pain became a way for the whole nation to grieve. Over the years, the art form grew and changed. And if you're talking about that story, you have to talk about Namirikpam Ibemni Devi. She's known as the First Lady of Khongjom Parba, an artist whose own life is totally intertwined with the history of the ballad itself. Her story is just incredible. She learned the art from her father, but as one of the very first women to perform it in public, she faced a ton of social backlash. People just weren't ready for it. But she didn't back down. In fact, she innovated the form, weaving in epic tales from the Mahabharata alongside the war stories. And through her sheer talent and grit, she turned Khongjom Parba into a wildly popular art form that everyone loved. And that right there, that's why this matters so much. Khongjom Parba became more than just entertainment. It was a way for the whole community to process the trauma of being defeated and colonized.
By singing about the sacrifice of their heroes, it became this shared remembrance, a tool to forge a sense of unity from a place of terrible loss.
But, like with any powerful legacy, the way it's remembered isn't always simple. In recent times, this powerful tradition of memory has started to clash with the discipline of history, and that's creating all new kinds of debates.
So today, the official commemoration happens at this huge complex, the Khongjom War Memorial. It's quite a sight, meant to lock down the memory of the war in stone and steel. And, pretty fittingly, it's home to the world's tallest sword statue, a massive symbol of that fighting spirit they're remembering.
And here is where you can really see the tension. You have the oral tradition, the Khongjom Parba, which is all about the meaning, the patriotism, the heroism, the emotional truth of it all. But then you have the written historical records, especially the British ones, which are all about documenting the cold, hard facts. And this has led to a huge public debate over something as basic as the date of the battle. Manipuri traditions say April 23rd, but British records say it was April 25th.
And look, this isn't just some dusty argument for historians. It has real-world effects. There have been movements to rectify the official date and even attempts to pressure the ballad singers to correct their own songs to match the written records. It brings up a huge question. Whose version of the past gets to be the official one? Which brings us all the way back to where we started, back to 2026. All of these threads, the historic war, the cultural memory, the modern debates, they are all coming together right now in a moment of crisis, but also maybe a moment of real hope. This quote from a recent analysis just captures the mood so perfectly. That feeling of being under siege, the loss of life, the deep insecurity. So many people in Manipur today see these haunting parallels between the colonial aggression of 1891 and the internal conflict that's tearing their home apart right now. But here's the thing that's so important to remember about that history. Back in 1891, the warriors who stood up to the British, they came from all different communities. You had Métis, Pangal, Naga, and Kuki fighters, all standing shoulder to shoulder. They saw a common enemy and fought to defend the land they all called home. It was a true moment of shared purpose. And now, in a really fascinating twist, the government's response to the boycott threat has been to invite the protest leaders for talks. This completely transforms Khongjom Day. Suddenly, it's not just about the past anymore. It's become a potential stage for dealing with the pain of the present, a chance to turn protest into dialogue, and maybe even reconciliation. And so that's the question we're left with. Is it possible for the spirit of Khongjom, that memory of shared sacrifice, of unity against a common threat, to be brought back to life to heal the deep divisions of today? Can a day that was born from war actually show the way to finally finding peace? The answer to that, well, it hasn't been written yet.